The emergency lights cast a red glow across the faces of the 12 men and women seated around the oval table. They were the last high commanders of the United Earth Defense Force, and none of them had slept in days. War maps covered the walls of the underground Denver headquarters, each showing more territory lost to the Dravini Empire. Commander John Miller stood at the head of the table, his uniform wrinkled, and his eyes sunken from exhaustion. At 43, he had spent nearly a third of his life fighting this war. He pointed to the holographic display showing Earth's remaining forces. "We've lost the Epsilon colony yesterday," Miller said. His voice was rough but steady. "The Archimedes station went dark this morning. At this rate, we'll lose Saturn's outposts within 2 weeks, Earth itself by the end of the month." Admiral Penny Walsh shook her head. "We should evacuate the civilians to the deep bunkers. We can hold out longer that way." "Hold out for what?" asked General Richard Gould. "The Dravini won't stop. They never have. 15 years of this war, and we've never seen them accept anything but total victory." Miller pressed a button, and a hologram changed to show all human-controlled space. The blue dots representing human forces were scattered across dozens of star systems, each group fighting its own losing battle. "We've been fighting this war wrong from the beginning," Miller said. "We split our forces to protect our colonies. We fight on 20 fronts with no coordination. The Dravini hit us one place at a time, and we can never bring our full strength to bear." Captain Susan Rogers frowned. "We tried coordinating before. The communication delay between systems makes it impossible. By the time our orders reach the outer colonies, they're already hours or days out of date." Miller nodded. "That's been our problem. But what if we could communicate instantly, no matter the distance?" The room fell silent. Admiral Walsh leaned forward. "That's impossible. Not even the Dravini can break the light-speed barrier for communications." "Maybe not," Miller said. "But Dr. Lewis on Luna Base thinks differently." He pulled up a file showing a woman with short gray hair and intense brown eyes. "Dr. Samantha Lewis has been working on quantum entanglement communication for the past 5 years. Her team believes they've had a breakthrough." "Quantum fairy tales," General Gould muttered. "We need real solutions, not science fiction." Miller looked him straight in the eyes. 3 days ago, Lewis sent a message from Luna to our base on Neptune. It arrived instantly. No delay. They'd done it again 12 times since then. The room erupted in voices. Miller let them talk for a moment before raising his hand. "I'm proposing Operation Unity. We gather every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have left. We equip them all with Lewis's quantum communicators. And then we hit the Dravini everywhere at once, with perfect coordination. Even if this works," Captain Rogers said, "we're still outnumbered." "Yes," Miller agreed. "But the Dravini expect us to fight as we always have, scattered and slow. They've never faced humanity truly united. Their advantage has always been their central command against our fragmented response. We can turn that against them." Admiral Walsh studied the hologram. "How long to implement this plan?" 1 week to gather the fleet. 3 days to install the quantum network. Then 5 hours of battle that will either win this war or end humanity." The room grew quiet again. Each person at the table knew what Miller was really saying. This was their last chance. Finally, Admiral Walsh nodded. "I'll authorize the resources. God knows we've tried everything else." Miller looked around the table at each tired face. "Send the orders. Every ship that can still fly. Every soldier who can still fight. Tell them to make their way to the rendezvous point behind Neptune. And tell Dr. Lewis her project just became our top priority." As the commanders filed out to carry their orders, Miller stayed behind, looking at the holographic stars. For the first time in years, he felt something he had almost forgotten: hope. Dr. Samantha Lewis had not seen the sun in 3 months. The Luna Base laboratories were buried 200 meters below the moon's surface, safe from Dravini scanners. She squinted at the quantum device on her workbench, making tiny adjustments with a magnetic tool. "You need to sleep sometime," said Paul Martinez, her assistant. He carried 2 cups of synthetic coffee across the lab. "Sleep can wait until we're dead," Samantha said, taking the cup without looking up. "And if this doesn't work, that won't be long." The quantum mesh network was her life's work. For 5 years, she had chased the dream of instant communication across space. Traditional signals were limited by the speed of light, making real-time coordination impossible between distant human forces. But quantum particles could affect each other instantly, no matter the distance between them. "Is it true?" Paul asked. "Miller is betting everything on our system." Samantha nodded. "The survival of our species now depends on whether these particles stay entangled across interstellar distances." A knock at the door made them both turn. Admiral William Carter stood in the entrance, his tall frame filling the doorway. Unlike the other military leaders, Carter had always supported Samantha's research. "Dr. Lewis," he said, "I need a straight answer. Will your system work across all our remaining forces?" Samantha put down her tools. "We've tested it between here and Neptune successfully," the entanglement held. "But scaling it up to hundreds of ships across dozens of systems..." She took a breath. "Theoretically, yes. But we've never tested it at that scale." Carter walked to her workbench and looked at the small metal box with its network of glowing blue crystals. "This is what humanity is pinning its hopes on." "Size isn't everything," Samantha said with a small smile. "Each crystal contains billions of entangled quantum particles. If we install these on every ship and base, they'll all be connected in a single network. No delay. Perfect coordination. And the Dravini can't intercept or jam it." "That's the beauty of it," Paul chimed in. "There's nothing to intercept. The particles don't travel through space. They're already connected at a quantum level. It's like they exist in 2 places at once." Carter studied the device for another moment. "You have 72 hours to make enough for the entire fleet. Whatever you need, you'll get." After the Admiral left, Samantha slumped in her chair. 3 days to produce 300 quantum mesh units. We've barely made 20 in the past year. Paul tapped commands into his tablet. "I'm redirecting all manufacturing drones to our lab. We'll need to simplify the design." "No," Samantha said firmly. "Simplification means reduced range or reliability. We can't risk either." She stood up, a new energy in her movements. "We need to work smarter. The basic entanglement process takes 12 hours per unit, but we can run them in parallel." For the next 50 hours, they barely spoke except to solve problems. Drone assistants moved between workstations, assembling components. The lab expanded into neighboring rooms as more scientists joined their team. Samantha worked until her vision blurred, then splashed water on her face and continued. On the final day, Admiral Carter returned. The lab was now filled with rows of identical metal boxes, each with its glowing blue heart. "Will they work?" he asked simply. Samantha picked up one of the units. It felt warm in her hands, alive with quantum potential. "They'll work. But the installation won't be simple. Each unit must be calibrated to its ship's systems. One mistake could drop a vessel from the network." Carter nodded. "We have 12 hours before the fleet is fully assembled. I've assigned our best engineers to help with installation." He looked at her tired face. "You'll need to personally oversee the flagship's integration." "I understand," Samantha said. As she packed the first quantum mesh unit into its protective case, she thought about all the lives depending on her work. Humanity had been losing this war for 15 years. Now they had one chance to turn the tide. Captain Daniel Harris stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the stars through the main viewport. His battleship had seen better days. Scorch marks from Dravini energy weapons scared the hull. 2 of the 6 engine pods were running at half power, but the Defiant could still fight, and that was all that mattered now. "Captain, we're approaching the Europa outpost," said Lieutenant Lisa Rodriguez from her station. At 32, she was young for her rank, but the war had promoted survivors quickly. "Any sign of Dravini patrols?" Daniel asked. "Nothing yet, sir. but our long-range sensors are damaged. They could be hiding behind Jupiter's moons. Daniel nodded. Proceed with caution. We can't afford to lose any more ships. His mission was critical. Gather the scattered human fleet for Operation Unity. The Defiant had already collected 3 cruisers and 5 frigates from Mars orbit. The ships now followed behind, their captains waiting for his orders. Outpost Europa is responding to our signal, Lisa said. They have 2 destroyers and a supply ship ready to join us. Tell them to prepare for immediate departure, Daniel ordered. We need to reach the Saturn defense line by tomorrow. As the Europa ships moved into formation, Daniel studied the tactical display. Their small fleet was growing, but many more vessels were needed. After Saturn, they would head to the outer colonies, hoping to find survivors. Sir, Lisa said suddenly, her voice tense, I'm picking up a Dravini communication signal. It's faint, but definitely them. Daniel straightened. Can you locate the source? Working on it. Her fingers moved quickly over her console. It's strange. The signal is encrypted, but differently than usual. I think I can break it. Do it, Daniel said, but be ready to jump out if a Dravini fleet appears. For several minutes, Lisa worked in silence while Daniel kept the fleet on alert. Finally, she looked up, her face pale. Sir, I've decoded enough to understand. The Dravini are planning a final assault on Earth. They're gathering their forces now. They'll attack in 7 days. Daniel felt cold fear in his stomach. Operation Unity was scheduled to begin in 5 days. It would be too late. Are you certain? He asked. Yes, sir. The message mentions Earth specifically and includes deployment orders for their main battle groups. She paused. There's something else. They describe Earth as the last human stronghold. They don't know about the fleet we're gathering. Daniel thought quickly. We have an advantage they don't expect. We need to speed up our mission. He turned to his communications officer. Send an encrypted message to Admiral Carter. Tell him about the Dravini plans. Sir, normal communication will take hours to reach Earth, the officer reminded him. Then we pray it gets there in time, Daniel said. Now set course for Saturn. Maximum speed. The journey to Saturn was tense. Twice they detected Dravini scout ships and had to hide in the shadow of moons or asteroids. Each time they found more human ships, Daniel explained the urgency of their mission. By the time they reached Saturn, the fleet had grown to 23 vessels. At Titan Base, they found Major Frank Thompson organizing the evacuation of the last human outpost in the outer system. The Dravini have been probing our defenses for days, Frank told Daniel as they met in the base's command center. We can't hold out much longer. You don't need to, Daniel replied. We're gathering the fleet behind Neptune for a counterattack. I need your ships and any personnel who can still fight. Frank looked surprised. A counterattack? With what? We've been losing this war for 15 years. Daniel showed him the plans for Operation Unity. This time, we fight together. All of us as one force, with instant communication between ships. For the first time in years, Frank smiled. When do we leave? Immediately, Daniel said. The Dravini are coming for Earth in 7 days. We have to be ready. As the Titan base personnel loaded onto the waiting ships, Lisa approached Daniel with new information. Sir, I've fully decoded the Dravini message, she said quietly. They're not just planning to take Earth. They intend to destroy it completely. Major Frank Thompson watched the last transport ship leave Titan base. Only he and 50 soldiers remained behind. Their mission: hold the base long enough for Captain Harris and the fleet to reach the Neptune rendezvous point safely. All civilians evacuated, sir, reported Sergeant Nancy Clark. Her armor was scratched and dented from previous battles. Good, Frank said. Now we prepare for company. Titan base was built inside the moon's crust, beneath its methane lakes. For 10 years, it had been humanity's furthest permanent outpost. Now it would be their last line of defense. Dravini ships approaching, called out Private George Bell from the sensor station. 5 vessels, scout class. Frank nodded. This was expected. The Dravini always sent scouts before the main attack force. How long until they're in range? 20 minutes, sir. Frank turned to Chief Engineer Patricia Wilson. She had stayed behind voluntarily, though she could have left with the civilians. Is everything ready? Patricia nodded, her face grim but determined. All the traps are set. The hydrocarbon processing plants are rigged. We can flood any section with fuel and ignite it remotely. Let's hope it slows them down enough, Frank said. He addressed his remaining troops. Our job is simple but vital. Every minute we keep the Dravini occupied here is another minute for the fleet to prepare. We hold as long as possible. Then we follow the evacuation plan. What he didn't say was that their chances of successful evacuation were slim. Everyone knew it anyway. 18 minutes later, the first Dravini landing craft touched down on Titan's surface. The aliens moved cautiously toward the base entrances, their environment suits protecting them from the moon's freezing atmosphere. They're scanning for life signs, Patricia said, watching the security feeds. Activating countermeasures. She pressed a series of commands. Hidden emitters began broadcasting false human life signs throughout the base's abandoned sections. They're splitting up, Frank observed, just as we hoped. The Dravini forces divided into 3 groups, each following the false signals. Frank waited until they were deep inside the unused tunnels. Spring the first trap, he ordered. Patricia activated the system. In the eastern tunnel, pumps opened and flooded the passage with processed methane. When the last Dravini entered the affected zone, she triggered the ignition. The explosion rocked the entire base. 1 Dravini team eliminated. Second group has detected the trap, Nancy reported. They're moving more carefully now. Switch to direct defense, Frank ordered. Positions everyone. The soldiers moved to their assigned places, setting up crossfire zones at key junctions. Frank took position at the main control room with Patricia and 3 soldiers. The third group is heading straight for us, Patricia said. Frank checked his weapon. They must have realized this is the command center. The next 30 minutes were chaos. The Dravini attacked in waves, using their superior numbers to push forward despite heavy losses. Frank's soldiers fought with the desperation of those protecting humanity's last hope. We've lost the lower level, Nancy reported over the comm. Her voice was strained, gunfire echoing behind her words. Fall back to checkpoint 2, Frank ordered. Patricia worked furiously at her console. I'm sealing off the conquered sections and venting atmosphere. It won't stop them for long, but it might slow them down. A massive explosion shook the base again. What was that? Frank demanded. They've breached the main fuel storage, Patricia said. We have maybe 15 minutes before this whole place becomes unstable. Frank made his decision. Begin evacuation protocol. Everyone to the emergency shuttles. As his remaining troops began to pull back, Frank received an incoming transmission. It was Captain Harris. Major Thompson, what's your status? Daniel's voice came through with static. We're buying you time, Captain, Frank replied. But we can't hold much longer. Have you reached the rendezvous point? Almost there. Just need another 30 minutes. Frank looked at Patricia, who shook her head. They didn't have 30 minutes. You'll get your 30 minutes, Captain, Frank said anyway. Just make sure this war ends soon. Frank turned to his engineer. Patricia, I need one last trap. Something big enough to keep them occupied for half an hour. She thought for a moment, then smiled grimly. I know just the thing. But we'll need to stay behind to trigger it manually. Frank nodded. We always knew this might be a one-way mission. Tell the others to evacuate now. The Neptune rendezvous point buzzed with activity as the last ships arrived. Hidden in the shadow of the giant blue planet, 189 human vessels gathered in formation. It was the largest fleet humanity had assembled in over a decade. Dr. Samantha Lewis worked tirelessly aboard the flagship UES Intrepid, installing the final quantum mesh unit. Admiral Carter watched from the doorway of the communications center. "How much longer?" he asked. "Almost done," Samantha replied without looking up. "But we have a problem." She pointed to a screen showing code sequences. "The flagship systems are rejecting parts of the quantum mesh integration. I can't figure out why." Eric Johnson, a young systems analyst with round glasses and a serious expression, spoke up from his workstation. "Let me look at it, Dr. Lewis." Eric had been assigned to help with the technical integration. Fresh out of the Earth Defense Academy, he had a natural talent for computer systems that even Samantha found impressive. She stepped aside, letting Eric access the main terminal. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he dug deeper into the ship's operating system. After several minutes, Eric's expression darkened. "I found the problem, and it's worse than we thought." He pulled up a visualization of the ship's computer architecture. Red lines spread throughout the system like veins. "What am I looking at?" Admiral Carter asked. "Dravini code," Eric said simply. "It's embedded throughout our systems. Not just on this ship. I'm detecting similar patterns across the fleet." Samantha leaned closer to the screen. "How is that possible?" "They've been infiltrating our computer systems for years," Eric explained. "Subtle changes, hidden protocols. Nothing obvious enough to trigger our security." Admiral Carter's face paled. "Are you saying the Dravini can track our fleet, or worse, control our ships?" "Not yet," Eric said. "These look like dormant routines. They're gathering intelligence, waiting to be activated." He pointed to a section of code. "This part is designed to disrupt communications in battle." Samantha understood immediately. They knew our biggest weakness was coordination. They planted these to make sure we stayed fragmented. "Can you remove it?" Carter asked. Eric shook his head. "Not in time. The code is too deeply integrated. If we try to purge it now, we risk disabling our own systems." The Admiral paced the small room. "Then Operation Unity fails before it begins. Without the quantum mesh, we're fighting the same losing war." "Not necessarily," Eric said, his eyes lighting up with an idea. "What if we use this against them?" He turned back to the terminal and began typing rapidly. "What are you doing?" Samantha asked. "I'm not removing their code," Eric explained. "I'm modifying it, changing its purpose." He looked up at them. "The Dravini designed this to disrupt our communications. I can reverse it to accept the quantum mesh and do something more." Admiral Carter leaned over Eric's shoulder. "What exactly?" "Their code contains recognition protocols that identify Dravini communication signatures," Eric said. "I can repurpose that to let our ships mimic their signals. We could appear as Dravini vessels to their sensors." Samantha caught on quickly. "A fleet-wide disguise. We could move right through their defenses before they realize we're human." For the next 6 hours, Eric worked without rest, creating a countermeasure that spread through the quantum mesh. As each ship received the update, their systems adapted, integrating the quantum network while turning the Dravini code to their advantage. Finally, Eric sat back, exhaustion clear on his face. "It's done." Samantha ran diagnostics on the quantum mesh. All 189 ships showed green status. For the first time in the war, the entire human fleet was connected by instant communication. Admiral Carter nodded in satisfaction. "Send word to all ships. Prepare battle stations." He checked the time. 0 hour is set for 600 Earth Standard Time. That gives the crews 8 hours to rest and prepare. As the Admiral left to brief the ship captains, Samantha turned to Eric. "You may have just saved humanity." Eric looked at the fleet status display, where each human vessel now pulsed with the steady heartbeat of the quantum network. "We're not saved yet, but for the first time, we have a real chance." Throughout the fleet, soldiers and crew prepared for battle. They cleaned weapons, checked systems, and tried to rest. Few could sleep. Everyone knew that the next day would determine the fate of humanity. At exactly 600 Earth Standard Time, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the UES Intrepid. Around him, officers waited silently at their stations. The moment had arrived. "All ships reporting ready, Admiral," said the communications officer. Carter took a deep breath. "Commence Operation Unity." Throughout the fleet, the same order echoed instantly through the quantum mesh network. 189 ships activated their jump drives simultaneously. The human fleet vanished from Neptune's shadow and reappeared at 27 different locations across Dravini-controlled space. For the first time in the 15-year war, humanity struck everywhere at once. Commander John Miller led Alpha Strike Team, consisting of 30 battleships and cruisers, directly into the heart of the Dravini fleet at Proxima Centauri. Their ships appeared in perfect formation, using Eric's modified code to broadcast Dravini identification signals. "Enemy ships are confused," reported Miller's tactical officer. "They're sending authentication requests." Miller smiled grimly. "Let them wait for a response. All ships, power weapons, and prepare for the Sunflare maneuver." The Sunflare maneuver was a complex battle tactic that required multiple ships to coordinate their movements with split-second timing. It had been impossible before the quantum mesh. Now, 30 ships moved as one, forming a sphere around the Dravini command vessels. "Execute," Miller ordered. The human ships fired their engines in perfect synchronization, creating a rapidly contracting sphere. As they closed in, each vessel released a spread of missiles at precisely calculated angles. The Dravini ships, still confused by the false identification signals, reacted too slowly. The missiles converged from all directions, overwhelming their defenses. "Direct hits across their fleet," the tactical officer announced. "Their flagship is crippled." Through the quantum mesh, Miller received updates from the other strike teams. Beta Team had secured the mining facilities in the Ta CD system. Gamma Team was engaging Dravini forces at Epsilon Eridani. "This is working," Miller said, almost unable to believe it. "Continue to Phase 2. In the Sirius system, Captain Daniel Harris led the assault on a major Dravini supply base. His ships dropped out of jump directly above the base's defensive perimeter. "Their shields are up," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. "But they're not firing yet. They still think we're friendly forces." Daniel nodded. "All ships, target their power generators. Fire when ready." The UES Defiant fired first, its main cannon sending a beam of energy through the base's shields. The other human vessels followed immediately, their attacks perfectly coordinated through the quantum mesh. The Dravini base, caught completely off guard, lost power within minutes. Daniel received confirmation through the quantum mesh that the base was neutralized. "Admiral Carter is requesting a status update," Rodriguez said. "Tell him Sirius system is secure," Daniel replied. "Moving to our second target." On Luna base, Dr. Samantha Lewis monitored the quantum mesh network, watching as data flowed instantly between human ships across dozens of star systems. Every victory, every tactical adjustment was shared in real time. 1 hour into the operation, Al Martins noted, "How's it holding up?" "The network is stable," Samantha said. "No degradation or delay." She pointed to the battle map. "Look at this. We've already taken control of 8 key systems." All studied the map in amazement. The Dravini can't respond fast enough. By the time they realize what's happening in one system, we've already moved to the next. Back on the Intrepid, Admiral Carter received continuous updates through the quantum mesh. Humanity's coordinated assault was succeeding beyond his most optimistic projections. "Sir," said Eric Johnson, who had been monitoring Dravini communications, "I'm detecting massive confusion in their command structure. They've never faced anything like this before." Carter nodded. "For 15 years, they fought us as scattered groups. Today, they face humanity united." 2 hours into Operation Unity, the human fleet had secured control of 15 strategic locations. The Dravini forces, unable to coordinate their response against the lightning-fast human attacks, were falling back to defensive positions. "Sir," Eric said suddenly, his voice excited. "I found something in their communications. The Dravini are calling for reinforcements from their high command." Carter leaned forward. "Can you trace the signal?" Eric worked at his console. "Yes, it's leading to HD 40,000, 307 grams. That must be where their central command is located." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Then that's where we'll strike next. All available ships prepare to converge on HD 40,000, 307 grams." 3 hours into Operation Unity, the human fleet had achieved what many thought impossible. 19 key systems were now under human control. The quantum mesh network hummed with constant updates and strategic adjustments. On the bridge of the UES Intrepid, Admiral Carter studied the holographic battle map. The blue dots representing human vessels moved in perfect coordination, while the red Dravini markers showed increasing disarray. "The Dravini are pulling their forces back to HD 40,000, 307 grams, reported the tactical officer. "They're abandoning outer defenses to protect their high command." Carter nodded grimly. "Just as we hoped. Broadcast to all ships. Prepare for Phase 3. Grand Admiral Laura Bennett, who had been coordinating the fleet's movements from a secondary command center on the Intrepid, joined Carter at the battle map. At 55, Bennett was the most experienced fleet commander humanity had left. "The Dravini's withdrawal is too orderly," she observed. "They're regrouping, not panicking." "I agree," Carter said. "Whatever is at HD 40,000, 307 grams must be vital to them. Worth sacrificing territory to protect." Eric Johnson approached with a data tablet. "Admiral, I've been analyzing Dravini ship movements throughout the battle. There's a pattern." He displayed a series of diagrams showing Dravini fleet formations. Their ships always maintain specific distances from each other, not for tactical reasons, but for communication. "What do you mean?" Bennett asked. "Their commands come from a central source," Eric explained. "Each ship relays the signal to others nearby. It's a cascade system. If we can cut off the source..." Bennett's eyes widened with understanding. Their entire command structure would collapse. On Luna Base, Samantha Lewis made a similar discovery. As she monitored the quantum mesh, she noticed unusual energy patterns in the Dravini ship movements. "Paul, look at this," she said, pointing to her screen. "The Dravini ships emit short-range quantum pulses when they change course." Paul leaned closer. "They're using a crude form of quantum communication." "Yes, but not like ours," Samantha replied. "They can't maintain entanglement over large distances. Instead, they use a relay system." She highlighted a specific energy signature. "Every command originates from the same location. And it's not HD 40,000, 307 grams." She entered new coordinates into the system. "It's coming from a previously unknown location 3 light-years beyond." Samantha immediately sent her findings through the quantum mesh to the Intrepid. When Eric received Dr. Lewis' data, he compared it with his own analysis. "She's right. HE 40,000, 307 grams is just another relay point. The true Dravini homeworld has been hidden from us all along." Admiral Carter and Grand Admiral Bennett studied the new coordinates. "If we strike their actual command center," Bennett said, "we could end this war immediately." Carter nodded. "But we need to be certain. I want confirmation before we redirect our forces." Captain Daniel Harris and the UES Defiant had just secured their 3rd target when they received new orders through the quantum mesh. "We're being reassigned," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. "Admiral Bennett wants us to investigate these coordinates outside the HD 40,000, 307 system." Daniel studied the location. "That's unexplored space. What are we looking for?" "A possible Dravini command center. We're to use passive scans only and report what we find." The Defiant proceeded cautiously, using the Dravini identification codes to mask their approach. As they neared the coordinates, their sensors detected a massive structure orbiting a small red dwarf star. It's definitely Dravini design, Rodriguez said, but unlike anything we've seen before. The structure was a perfect sphere, approximately 100 kilometers in diameter. Thousands of communication arrays extended from its surface like spines. This is it, Daniel said, the central node of their entire communication network. He sent their findings back through the quantum mesh. Recommend immediate strike with all available forces. On the Intrepid, Grand Admiral Bennett reviewed the Defiance data. Her years of experience told her this was their moment. With your permission, Admiral Carter, I'll lead the assault on the Dravini Command Center, she said. Carter nodded. Take 60% of our fleet. I'll continue the offensive at HD 40,000, 307 grams to keep their defensive forces occupied. Bennett turned to the communications officer. Send the order. All designated ships to converge on the new coordinates. We'll drop out of jump simultaneously and strike from all sides. As the fourth hour of Operation Unity began, Bennett's strike force prepared for what they hoped would be the final battle. For the first time since the war began, humans could sense victory approaching. The fifth hour of Operation Unity began with the largest coordinated jump in human military history. 63 ships under Grand Admiral Bennett's command appeared around the Dravini command sphere, emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. All ships reporting successful arrival. Lieutenant Rodriguez told Captain Harris on the bridge of the UES Defiant. No detection by Dravini defense systems yet. The massive Dravini command sphere hung in space before them, its surface bristling with communication arrays. Small defense satellites orbited it like moons. The disguise is holding, Harris said. They still think we're their own ships. Through the quantum mesh, Grand Admiral Bennett's orders reached every vessel simultaneously. All ships maintain position. Prepare boarding parties. Our goal is to capture the command center intact. On the UES Intrepid, Eric Johnson monitored the operation while continuing to analyze Dravini communication patterns. Admiral Carter, he said suddenly, I found something strange in their command signals. They're not using battle languages or military codes. Carter looked up from the tactical display. Explain. The signals are simple, almost like maintenance instructions to automated systems. Eric's eyes widened. Sir, I don't think the Dravini fleet is directly controlled by living commanders. As Bennett's forces closed in on the command sphere, defensive systems finally activated. Energy shields shimmered around the structure, and weapon platforms turned toward the approaching human ships. Our cover is blown, Bennett announced through the quantum mesh. All ships, battle formation. Target their weapon platforms first. The human fleet opened fire as one, their weapons striking precisely the same points on the Dravini defenses. The shields flickered and failed under the perfectly coordinated assault. Boarding teams, launch now, Bennett ordered. 20 transport ships broke from formation and raced toward the command sphere's now exposed docking bays. Captain Harris led the first wave aboard the Defiant's primary shuttle. Remember, he told his strike team as they approached, we need their central communications hub intact. Set weapons to stun where possible. The shuttle landed in a vast docking bay, surprisingly empty of Dravini ships. Harris and his team moved cautiously into the station, weapons ready. Other boarding teams reported similar conditions through the quantum mesh. Where are all the defenders? Lieutenant Rodriguez whispered as they moved deeper into the structure. They encountered automated defense systems, sentry drones, and security barriers, but no living Dravini soldiers. The human teams neutralized these obstacles with surprising ease, their coordinated movements overwhelming the station's isolated systems. After 20 minutes of steady advance, Harris's team reached a sealed door marked with Dravini symbols that intelligence had identified as meaning Central Command. This is it, Harris said. All teams, hold position until we verify what's inside. Engineers bypassed the security systems, and the massive door slid open. Harris led his team into a circular room filled with advanced technology. In the center stood 5 small figures. They were nothing like what humans had imagined. The Dravini were barely 1 meter tall, with delicate bodies, large heads, and six-fingered hands. They wore no armor or weapons. Instead, they were dressed in simple robes with complex patterns. The Dravini made no move to resist. One stepped forward, activating a translation device. "We surrender," it said in a high musical voice. "Please do not destroy our communication nexus." Harris lowered his weapon in shock. "You're the Dravini High Command, the species that's been winning this war for 15 years. "We are the administrators," the Dravini replied. "Our species evolved beyond physical combat millennia ago. We use automated systems and contracted mercenary forces for defense." Through the quantum mesh, Harris reported the situation to the fleet. Grand Admiral Bennett and Admiral Carter were equally stunned. "If you are peaceful," Harris asked the administrators, "why have you been trying to destroy humanity?" The Dravini looked confused. "Destroy? No. We have been attempting to integrate your species into the Galactic Management Protocol. Your scattered governance made proper communication impossible." Eric Johnson, listening from the Intrepid, suddenly understood. It was all a misunderstanding. Their integration looked like invasion to us, and our scattered resistance looked like madness to them. With the central communication hub under human control, Admiral Carter sent a simple message through the Dravini network: surrender or be destroyed. Throughout known space, Dravini automated ships and bases received the command and immediately stood down.